Have you ever made a monster for your party and they completely demolished it within the first couple of rounds? Your health was probably not balanced. Today, we're going to be going over the tricky subject of how to handle a monster's health. This is Home Brew Help. Welcome to Home Brew Help. I'm Tony, and today we're going to be tackling the tricky subject of handling a monster's health. Now, I've seen so many times where a monster's health is way out of proportion. You might have a goblin that has like 400 HP, all these different things, and they come across our desk all the time. But it comes down to one very simple rule that's not being applied. Now, first, I want to stress this. It's not your fault. The DM's guide and the monster manual are convoluted, and the process for making monsters in general is messy. While there are a full 9 pages in the DM's guide that you can actually go to for making a monster, you've probably looked at them a few times, gone into a barbarian rage, chucked them across the room, and figured, you know what, I'll just reskin something. Not to worry, I'm here to help. But I have to warn you, it's going to be like eating an elephant. It's piece by piece to actually make a monster. So today we're just going to be focusing on one thing and one thing only, their health. And it's going to involve a subject that not a lot of people like. Math. So many times I hear that D&D 5th edition has removed math from the game, that they've made it simpler and it's easier than previous editions. While that is sort of true, the math is still very much there. It's just not at the player level. 5e hides its math inside stat blocks of its monsters, its weapon system, its saving throws, its proficiency, and of course, inside your health of your monsters. I'm going to show you the process for determining a monster's health, but to do so, we first have to look at its size. Have you ever wondered why there are exactly 6 sizes to monsters in the monster manual? Tiny, small, medium, large, huge, gargantuan? Well, it's actually pretty simple. Each monster size is dedicated to one of the 6 dice you roll every time you play D&D. Tiny is a D4, small is a D6, medium a D8, large is a D10, huge a D12, and gargantuan a D20. And each of those dice are the base for the health of a monster you create. So the first thing we need to do is determine a monster's size. Let's start with small. A good example of this is a goblin. He's small, his challenge rating is low, but he is a good example, and you'll see why in a second. If we take a look at his stat block, you'll see that it uses a D6 for his health, but for some reason it has 2 D6. I wonder where that comes in. Don't worry, we'll get to that soon, but for now, just note that his con modifier is +0. Now let's compare him to a smaller creature, like say a kobold. You'll see that the kobold is also a D6 because he's small, but his con modifier is -1. Notice something interesting about that? His health is 2d6 minus 2. So here is why. The formula for health is simple. It's the size of the creature times X plus the constitution of a creature times X, where X is basically whatever you want based on the amount of health you project your monster to have. You work it backwards from that base. The numbers in the monster manual for health are what we call average health. You'll see them right next to the dice roll health. It's often implied that you should be rolling dice for these, but the average health is pretty easy to determine as well. Now let's take a look at a Goblin Boss, for example. He's still a low challenge rating, but since he's a leader, he has more health. Maybe he gets to eat first, or before the other goblins, or maybe people wait on him hand and foot. He has a D6, but it's 6d6, but his average health is only 21. If you roll 6d6 to determine his health, you could potentially get a maximum HP of 36, but his average is just 21. Now, determining average is just as simple as determining the max HP. The average roll on a die is 1/2 the die plus 0.5. And the formula for determining average health is the same as before. We just swap out the average roll for the size of the creature. So instead of D6 times X plus Constitution times X, we have 3.5 times X plus Constitution times X. So if we truly want to make a monster with balanced health, you start out by naming the range of health you want the monster to have. You just decide how much you want it to be, and then we divide it from there. There is a handy little chart on the page 274 of the DM's guide that shows the average health by challenge rating. And if you know your challenge rating system, this should be pretty easy, but we can cover that in another video. But this is perfect for keeping within the boundaries on average health for a CR. Just don't think that you have to stick to this average health, because there are many different factors that determine the combat rating for something. And also remember, your players can take on more than what their current combat rating level is. It's just a good reference for what we're doing here. So let's say we want to make a Mega Goblin with an average health of 40 and a max of, say, like 65. We know he's a goblin, so he uses a d6 for his health. His average die is half of that plus 0.5, so 3.5. And then we take the 40 HP, divide it by 3.5, and it tells us how many dice we need in order to get there. We get 11. So 11 d6 is 66 max HP, and 11 times 3.5, the average, is 38.5. Now, that's pretty close, so we're just going to say acceptable. Now, I'm using goblins simply because they have a +0 to con, but let's say we want our goblin mega boss to be a bit more seasoned. Maybe he's been drinking raw eggs like Rocky Balboa, and his con modifier now is +1. All you do is add that to the equation. So 11d6 plus 11 times the con. 11 being the number of dice that you rolled to get to your average health that you wanted, and you multiply it by the con. Now, this would give him a beefy max HP of 77, but he's still a CR1 goblin. If you go down that chart, you'll notice that that average there for a CR1 goes up to 85. The formula is simple, and it applies to every monster in the monster manual. If you don't believe me, check it out. If you're simply reskinning or making monsters harder, this is the easiest way to do it and keep it balanced. Now, there are a lot of crazy things that happen when determining a monster's stats, and we did use a con stat in this one. So if you guys would like to know more about that process, that's totally fine. I would love for this series to continue. Just give me a shout in the comments below, or throw a few bucks our way by becoming a Patreon or picking up one of our releases in the DM's Guild. I really hope this guide has been somewhat helpful for you guys and easy to follow, and that you now have a basic understanding of how to work with a monster's health so that your party doesn't either decimate it or it's way too overpowered for them. This is just one of our Homebrew Help series, and we hope to do a lot more. But remember, the best campaigns are always the ones that are homebrewed, so until next time, keep brewing.